Welcome to Community Connections with Children's Services Council of St. Lucie County. I am just one of your hosts, Sean Boyle, and with me is
Ashley Mock.
And welcome to the half-hour radio program on 104.5 The Flame at 10 a.m. on every Sunday, but also thanks to a wonderful partnership with St. Lucie Public Schools, particularly WLX-TV, we are also a monthly television show.
Surprise.
Surprise. So what we do with our time together is we talk about resources and or ways for you to get involved to continue to make St. Lucie County great, particularly around children and families. Now, Ashley and I have other roles at the Children's Services Council besides playing host once a month on TV.
We do enjoy this part.
This is the best part of my week and month.
I know, you like this part.
But the 5 things that we do at the Children's Services Council, and we say this every single show. I also say this in my sleep. Those 5 things are, because they're so important, are 1, we make sure that every baby's a healthy baby. 2, stop child abuse before it happens by building strong families. 3, keep kids off the streets. 4, keep them in school. And 5, keep them off drugs, alcohol, and other risky behaviors by offering programs and resources available to all families in our community.
I'm sorry, I like counting. I need to keep track of you.
I know, just as long as you keep pace, because otherwise it throws me off.
I know, I'm sorry. So Sean talked about those priority areas, and there's a couple different ways where you can learn more about the programs that actually do the work in those areas. And one of them is obviously by watching this show, but also on our website at cscslc.org. We have a list of all of our funded program partners there with contact information. But we also have a printed family guide, and we have talked to you guys about this for a long time, I feel like. But we have just updated the family guide. So from time to time, we have programs that get new locations or new phone numbers or add something to their repertoire that we need to include in here. So we've got new versions of this family guide that are now available. And what I have done, because we say this all the time, that the family guides are available for us to deliver, but to make it super easy for all of you, I've added a form to our website. So if you visit our website and you find the link where you can get, it actually says find a program in our family guide. There's a form right on the website that you can fill out and say, I have a church or I have this business and I want you to bring some family guides to me, or I want to be able to come pick some up from your office. And we'll get them set aside from you, and a member of the team will get back to you and let you know that they're ready. And we'll figure out a way to get them to you. So I've made it super simple.
And truth be told, for our television viewers, I brought the wrong one. I brought the older one. There's a newer picture on the new one. So
they're that new. We've only had them for like 3 days.
But the whole point of this show is to connect the viewers and the listeners to what resources. Now, obviously, we want you to watch every month, and we want you to listen every week on 104.5 The Flame at 10 a.m. on Sundays. But you can shortchange all that by picking up a family guide, researching it, and then when you're at the water cooler, if people still hang out at water coolers,
sure, yeah.
Or if you're at church or you're hanging out with your neighbors and they're like, you know, I really need health insurance for my child, you can be like, hey, I picked up this cool family guide, and I heard Sean, Ashley, and today even John talk about what resources are out there and connect those people that you know and love so that, you know, the families can get the help that they need.
The family guide includes a phone number and an address for most of the programs if they're location based. So like our after school programs that have locations where they operate out of, all that information is included in there. So it's really easy to use. It gives you everything that you need. We know that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to pick up the phone and make that phone call. But we've tried to make it really easy and compiled all that information into one place.
Look, if you need help now, we're so simplified. I just realized what we've done. You don't have to call us. You don't even have to send us an email. Just fill out the form. How much more anonymous can it be? And just give us an address. And honestly, probably one of the 3 of us at this table today will be the one that delivers. You can even choose who you want to deliver.
Oh, no, that's not on the form.
It's concierge service to make sure that you are aware of the resources. And again, how many did we print?
10,000.
10,000. So, you know, if you have a place of business and you have customers or you have employees and you need 100 of them, we are not going to bat an eye at that number. We will come and bring them to you.
Absolutely.
Another great way to connect, I have to mention this.
That's your favorite.
It's a love-hate relationship I have with it. But another great way to connect with us is through social media, and particularly I'm talking about Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, if you're watching the TV program and you're multitasking, you're trying to figure out what your high school sweetheart is up to now on Facebook, you can also look up Children's Services Council, St. Lucie County. We post on there nearly every day, whether it be a resource, an activity that's coming up, something to do with your family, and or something inspirational. By all means, check out our page, like us, and you will be inspired.
We hope.
If not educated.
There you go.
Perhaps even entertained.
So So last week we had a great guest on our radio show with us, and it was Jeannie and Christine from the St. Lucie County Fair, which is getting ready to start at the end of February. So we just wanted to remind everyone that the information for the fair is available on their website. There are dollar days, there are days that are free, there are mega passes that you can buy, lots of options for kids and families, so much education that's out there. There's a great building that's operated by Kiwanis that displays all of the school displays. So St. Lucie Public Schools have actually put together displays that I know the kids in the schools work really hard on. And it's really just, it's a really fun time, a really good place. We're really lucky that our local community has stayed so invested in agriculture and in the fair experience for our residents.
If you have a family, you're going to take them to the fair because there's rides. There's also fried Twinkies and usually Oreos.
And donuts.
And donuts, but by all means jump and check out the educational components as well.
You can eat the food, but go see the fun stuff too.
Look, if you watch us regularly and or if you listen to us on the radio regularly, we're going to bring this up until the end of April.
Yes.
But 2020 is census time. And why is that so important? Why are we talking about the census? Because census drives representation for our state and our community, but also, quite honestly, it drives money. So we wanted to make sure that every child, every family, every person in our community gets counted in the census. Because that has a ripple effect, if you will. It impacts our representation in Washington. It impacts the formulas that are set in place for the states, and that trickles down to us. So that impacts our roads, that impacts our schools. It really impacts our well-being. They say that for every person that's undercounted, hopefully I'm wording this right, every person that's undercounted costs your community $1,600 per person.
Yeah.
So last year, I brought this up before, about 10% of children were underrepresented in the census. That cost us about $9 million for our community. That's unacceptable. So we're here to say, make the census fun. Yeah, I said census and fun. I'm pretty sure that's not the talking points they gave us, but make it fun. So you're going to get a card in the mail, and it's going to have a website address. Put in that website address and fill out the census information. It's purely all confidential. It's only for the count. It's not going to be shared anywhere else. I think they have to hold it confidentially for like 100 years before anybody can look at it.
And too, I know one of the things that Robin, who we work closely with at the census, has shared is that it is also not able to be shared within governmental systems.
Right.
So the IRS is not going to get a hold of the information. It's literally only for the census. That is it. So, we have shared some videos over the last few weeks on our Facebook page, on our website, about myths and things surrounding the census. But it is so, so important that everyone gets counted.
So you're going to get a card. Go jump on the website, fill it out, you're good to go. If you don't fill it out, you're going to get another card. If you don't fill that out, you're going to get another card. If you ignore it all, someone's going to knock on your door and say, hey, please complete this because it's that important. And if you're listening to us, understand that we realize and we see the impact that it can have on our community. That's why we keep talking about it. So please, please, please complete the census information when you get it in the mail.
And if you do have questions, there is a ton of information on their website. There are local people that are working for the census that you can ask questions to. So if you are unsure or uncertain, please reach out to somebody to get those questions answered.
And the only other thing I want to bring up before we get to our guest, who I can see out of the corner of my eye is really anxious to start speaking.
So excited.
It's tax season.
It is.
Have you done your taxes yet?
I have.
Wow, I have not.
I am done.
But if you haven't done your taxes yet and you made $56,000 or less and you have a family, the United Way, in partnership with the county and in partnership with a lot of accountants, will do your taxes for free. So if you make $56,000 or less, jump to the United Way of St. Lucie County's website. It's called the VITA tax program. The reason why they do this and the reason why it's so important, it's very similar to the census. Yep. Families that make $56,000 or less, they're probably going to earn money back, whether it be earned income, child tax credit, or whatever it may be. So you want to make sure that your family and our community, again, gets that money. So where else can you get your taxes done for free?
I don't think anywhere.
Ashley will do it if you know her well.
No, for a small fee.
Well, see there, it's not free. So that makes my point even more. So make sure if you make $56,000 or less, go to the United Way of St. Lucie County's website, look for the VITA tax program. There's locations throughout our community where you can go and get your taxes done for free.
Yep.
All right, so I think we got to put him out of his misery. He's been waiting so anxiously. It's making me nervous.
It is, and we joked with him before the show started that we know he's done this before, not
He's
on our
great.
show, but on other shows on this station.
You know, he's his worst
Do
critic,
we make
right?
him nervous?
No, we make him laugh.
Maybe.
He's his own worst critic because he is phenomenal with people. We attended a Boys and Girls Club event. Just a little side note before we introduce him, we attended a Boys and Girls Club event. He was phenomenal working with families. He created I don't remember what it was called.
Truth box.
A truth box. So he made kids read a truth. It was like, I am good enough. I can do whatever I want to accomplish. And then they went and picked out a book. But he was phenomenal with the families, and even more so, he's a phenomenal basketball player. I know that's an aside, but at the Boys and Girls Club event,
That's an important note.
they had the kids that won their basketball tournament played the old guys, and he's
Is he an old guy?
Well, not really, but fortunately he was on our team, and part of the reason why we won is because of this gentleman.
Who knew all those talents?
That's probably not the introduction you thought we were going to
No,
give you.
I don't think so. So we've been really lucky. I think Sean and I feel that we've been really lucky to have worked with this gentleman for the last couple of years, and for him now to be on the team at Children's Services Council, which is super important to us. But I would be willing to bet that a lot of you have seen him out in the community over the last several months, because he really spends a lot of time out there attending events, sharing information, getting resources out to programs, to businesses, to families. So we're really excited that he's here with us today. John Cesar, who's not nervous at all. Maybe a little bit. But John's role with us has kind of shifted. So we started a position last year for our St. Lucie Reads program. And I know that our listeners and our viewers have heard us talk about St. Lucie Reads, but we really wanted to focus some dedicated attention on growing that program throughout the community and really identifying what the best course of action was going to be to make sure that our kids could read on grade level by the end of third grade. And John came in and implemented, I think, more than you and I ever thought was going to happen with that program, and did it so wonderfully that we really felt like he needed to be doing that for Children's Services Council at the same time. So that's kind of a little backstory. But what I want to talk about that I think most people might not know is really how that's not your first relationship with CSC. That wasn't the first introduction that you had. It goes way back.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not. You're not as old as I am, so.
Well, really what we're doing, John, it's like this is your life.
Yeah.
We're just going to walk you through birth until, no, I'm just kidding.
It feels like an interview and like hundreds of people watching now.
No, it's not. It's just us.
It's not hundreds, it's thousands. So.
But I do want to kind of go back. So you grew up in Fort Pierce, as did I, which is awesome. But when you were attending school here, you fell into one of our after-school programs. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Oh, yeah. One of the after-school programs I attended frequently was Frontline for Kids, and it was just an opportunity which I didn't have at home as far as homework, help with homework. You know, my mom and grandma. My mom usually was working, so it was just my brother and grandma at home, so we didn't have the assistance needed for homework. So I'm not sure how my mom found out about it, but we referred to Frontline, and Mr. Gaiman, who is the CEO of Frontline, took us in and just made sure we had resources. And like Sean mentioned before, I'm getting basketball is because I spent a lot of time and got really interested in basketball, and Frontline ended up having a basketball team, so that really just kept me having something to do, and instead of being on the streets or getting myself in trouble, basketball became some sort of motivation for me to keep right. So I had early experience with children's service because I remember people with the logo I didn't understand at the time because I was like in middle school and wasn't really too focused on it. But I remember people with children's services logo and whatnot came to visit Frontline, and we were like, our best behavior, try to be our best behavior at that time. So it's cool now that I'm on this side of the tracks, going back in the community, sharing the resources that we have, and just pushing an organization that I truly believe in, because I know you guys have a passion for the community and a heart for the kids, which matches what my passion that I have for the community and the kids. So It's an
And
honor.
it's not you guys, it's us. Because the reason why you're part of the team is because you have that exact same passion.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit. So you have, you do an engagement and outreach, but really half of your focus, or a big part of your focus, is St. Lucie Reads. So can you explain to everybody kind of what St. Lucie Reads is?
St. Lucie Reads is an initiative, but the goal of the initiative is just a network of individuals and organizations trying to come together. Organizations that's already doing things as far as literacy and like school board, early learners coalition, and different other organizations. But it's just a way of bringing everyone together and trying to see how we can work together and promote each other, promote literacy, and see how we all can be that village to ensure that every child is reading on grade level, especially by the 3rd grade, which is the target of St. Lucie Reads overall. So
in regards to St. Lucie Reads, so one of the big focuses has been making sure that books are available. So can you kind of, I don't want to put you on the spot, too late, right? We already did that by inviting you here, but can you explain what you did over the summer in regards to the book fair and how that relates to your personal experience? Because I think it's such a great story, and I think a lot of our viewers, if they're wondering, how can I get involved with St. Lucie Reads, I think this is a good entree.
Oh, yeah. With St. Lucie Reads, a lot of the things that I do is from experience and what worked for me, what didn't work for me, or just how it affected me, because I was a struggling reader. Today, I still struggle to open a book, even though I know their importance, and that's one of the things that I strive is trying to create the love and joy for reading, so when they become, kids become my age or older, that they're still reading and they have a love for it, and that they're reading to not just to read, but reading to grow. And one of the things that we did this past summer is the free book fair, and the idea came with my wife. We were just talking, and I was trying to think of ideas, and she mentioned book fair, and I was like, oh, I remember book fair. I used to get super excited, even though I wasn't a reader, but it was just something different, something exciting. But by the time the book fair ended, I was kind of bummed because growing up, I didn't have much. I couldn't afford much. The only thing sometimes we were able to afford is maybe a pencil or eraser from the book fair. So it was like, but I remember the passion and the joy that the book fair ignited in me. So that's where the idea came from, and spoke with you guys, and you guys were on board and provided the books and resources. And we picked out books, not just books the kids were finding at school, but books that they were more popular at the time. Avengers was a big deal, so we bought books that were Avengers, Black Panther, and just fun. Not just book. Here's a book. Make sure you read it. Here's a book, and we laid it out and allowed them to choose it themselves. Allowed them to pick whatever they're interested in, sports, music, arts, whatever it was. Allowed them to have that choice, and that was a great experience because you saw the faces of the kids when they got to choose, and they saw it was free, and we created raffle tickets. That way, it's not just a free give me out. It was a way they could use them tickets, and they could add like they're purchasing the books. And of course, it was summertime, so we had to add toys and little gadgets along because we wanted to make it feel like a book fair, not just here's some books. So we added toys and little games as well, so they could pick out.
Kind of replicate an actual
book
fair. Yeah.
I think the thing that's been so interesting for me since you have come on is that you really, and you talk about this all the time out in the community, is that you're really trying to instill not just the importance of reading, but the joy and the love of reading. And I think that's something that really resonates when we're out talking to teachers, when we're out talking to parents. That's something that I think adults have a hard time figuring out, how to make kids like reading. But I think you've done a really great job of figuring out what books they're enjoying, what books they're going to seek out, and making sure that we have those books available to them. I know February is Black History Month, and we just made a purchase of a bunch of Black History related books that you've been taking out in the community. And I know how important that is for the kids in our community to see themselves in those books. So I think that's been really cool. One of the things that you've really kind of pushed into St. Lucie Reads is making sure that the kids can make those selections themselves.
Yeah, I think it's important because some children, they don't have the choice. Like for me growing up, the books that we had was the ones from school, which sometimes weren't the funnest or the most interesting. So having that choice is big, and sometimes the kids, they don't have that choice in life. Or they have to do what mommy and daddy say or whoever their caregiver is. So that choice, I think, plays a big role in trying to instill a love. Because at the end of the day, if it's forced, it's hard to ever actually love it.
Mm-hmm.
So the book fair obviously happened in the summer, and you went around and you purposely targeted after-school programs that are maybe in low-income areas where kids probably weren't able to participate in the school book fair because, like you said, the example, it costs money. But there's activities or there's ways for kids to get books and families really all year round. Can you explain the little library structure or system? Or
Oh, yes, the little libraries was here before I even started, of course, and that was a great idea. The little libraries, we set those up, as you guys know, are non-traditional places. We try to target non-traditional places because I know I've been to outreach events and like teachers come up like, can I have a little library in my classroom? It's like, no, because
you work at a place that has a library?
Yeah, because we're expected for them to, have books. So we try to do the non-traditional places like barbershops, churches, laundromats, tax collectors' offices, businesses. When just to have opportunity for a child instead of just sitting there or looking at magazines or on their phone, they have an opportunity where they can pick out a book. And we encourage the locations where the little libraries are for them to keep those books so they could start their own little libraries. Because at the end of the day, some kids don't even have books at home besides the ones possibly coming from school. So we encourage them to pick out a book that they like, they could read it, they could keep it, and start their own little library at home.
And this is the part where our listeners and viewers can get involved, right? I mean, obviously, if they work in reading, if they're a teacher or, somebody at a nonprofit that's listening, they can become part of the St. Lucie Reads initiative. And we'll talk about kind of the strategy we're moving forward. But if somebody's watching and they own a business or they go to a church or they get their hair done somewhere and they're like, oh, my place could have a little library, they can contact you and you'll come and deliver it at no cost to anybody, right?
Yes.
And then the other way that they can get involved, and I've seen this in our office, is if they have children's books. I want to make sure we emphasize the word children's.
Yes, thank
So we've gotten some dictionaries and stuff, and encyclopedias, but if they have gently used children's books that are laying around, let's say their children are all grown, and they're in the attic or they're in their bedroom, they can donate them to the St. Lucie Reads initiative, and that's what we restock the libraries with. And how many little libraries do we have throughout the county right now?
We have about 80 active little libraries because we had more, but going back and following up, some of them, the office may have closed or people may have moved on. So about 80 active. So it sounds like a lot, but when you look at how many businesses and churches and things like that in the community, it's not at all. And the goal is to try to have it everywhere in the community so the child is not only seeing literacy pushed and promoted at school, but also wherever else they are at in the community.
And if you go on our website, the CSC SLC website, which I know has been on the banner for the TV show, but you can even shortchange that and just go to stluciereads.org. You can actually pull up a map of where all the libraries are at, right?
And you can fill out a form to request a little library at your location. So if that's something that you're interested, you can do that as well. I do want to talk a little bit, and Sean sort of alluded to this. For a while, the strategy for St. Lucie Reads has really kind of been as much as we can everywhere. But we have, with your help, I think, gotten a little bit more strategic about what we're doing, excuse me, in the community, and really kind of focused our efforts moving forward on 2 locations that were identified with help from our community partners. Maybe neighborhoods or schools where the kids didn't quite have access to as much as kids at other schools did. So those 2 target areas are Windmill Point Elementary in Port St. Lucie and St. Lucie Elementary in Fort Pierce. And I know you like to issue challenges on the show, but a lot of what John and I have been talking about recently is really trying to outreach to the churches, the businesses, the individuals who live in those communities, in those surrounding neighborhoods, to really surround that school and give us whatever help it could be. If it's just putting a sign up at your business that talks about a little library, or if you have the space to host a little library, we're trying to put together kind of a menu of options for people. But really it's focused on those 2 areas, and there's a couple different ways that people can get involved in either one of those places.
Yeah, and I don't want to take credit for that idea. When we attended a business symposium sponsored by Early Learning Coalition and PNC Bank, is the Florida Chamber CEO is the one who spoke, and they're pushing early education. So that was where the idea came from. Instead of us trying to, like Sean had mentioned, eat the elephant in one bite, where instead of trying to reach the whole county, it was easier to target 2 locations to start off. And the goal, like you mentioned, is to just surround that whole community within the like 5-mile range, probably 2 to 5 mile range, and try to instill a love and promotion of literacy. So the kids are not just getting the message from school, but at church, at the bank, at when they're going to a DMV office, everywhere in the community, pushing the same message, how important reading isn't, but how fun literacy and reading is as well. I think it's a better chance where the child, one day it'll click, or one day it'll click for their parents or their caregiver if they're seeing that message over and over and over again. So that's the goal with the targets, is to target those communities with the little libraries, with just us all sharing the information, the points of reading to the businesses, and so they could also be promoting that and pushing and supporting in whatever way they find is most reasonable for them.
And I also want to point out for our viewers and listeners, while we're surrounding the schools, we also recognize that there's child care centers in those same areas. So we're also going to wrap around and support those child care centers as well, because chances are those kids in those child care centers are going to be going to that school. Now, and if you're watching and listening, you're like, well, that's great, but you know, I live not anywhere near there. Our target is those two, and once we kind of can see the impact, then we're gonna continue to move and eventually cover the whole county. But like you said, we can't eat the elephant all in one bite, which, by the way, I thought was a common expression until I said it to John, and he looked at me like, what are you talking about? And then I found out later he Googled that expression to find out what it means. So,
well, there you go. But I do think that's important to note. So if you're not in one of those, close to one of those schools, we have not forgotten about you. And of course, the little libraries will continue to be placed everywhere throughout the community. But what we're really trying to do is make sure, like John said, the students, the kids in that community are just getting that message from everyone and everywhere, so that they really start to believe that reading is something that they can do.
So John, you talked about that you're not really a reader. And I remember before you started working at Children's Services Council, you and I were meeting and just kind of talking, and I said, hey, you need to read this book. And you're like, I don't read. I'm like, well, then get it on audio because it's important. But you have instilled reading with your young son. So can you talk about like why or how you think he's, enjoys reading so much?
Because it's been instilled in him. He's only 3 years old, and before bedtime, it's a book. Even the nights that I'm like, no, I'm too tired, or maybe tomorrow, he doesn't want to go to bed without a book. And now he opens this and he acts like he's reading, and he try to say his words. It's like little things like that. I didn't have the opportunity and the experience, and I think it's going to play a long run. In the long run, it'll have a lasting impact in his life. And like when he gets to my age, he's gonna open and just continue reading and reading. It's gonna be fun, and he's gonna love to learn, learn. And he's gonna be a continued learner because of that. So that's the goal for everyone.
That's perfect.
So the other thing, we've obviously talked about book distribution and all that, but the other way people can get involved is, there are some families that's not able to happen, but you can sign up to be a reading mentor at the schools or at the child care center. So we really want to encourage everybody to get involved, whatever level of comfort you are. And the entree point is to call John or contact John, and you can just do that at 408-1100 or go to stluciereads.org.
All of that information is available on the website, and it kind of breaks down all the options. So everything you can find there.
We're out of time. John, you survived.
See?
You okay?
You did it.
You good?
I'm okay.
All right. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. By all means, contact John. Get involved with St. Lucie Reads. And remember, it's our children, our community, our future. We're all in this together. We'll see you next time.